Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series. Playing solo as always, and tonight's quest is the Aldburg Plot. So I'm doing something a little differently tonight because I recorded this whole video and then I did not realize that I didn't have my microphone hooked up. So we're watching the game on video, and I'm going to provide commentary after the fact, and we'll see how this works. If viewers like it, you can request that I do this more in the future. Or if you don't like it, say nothing, and I'll immediately go back to the other method. But for this game, out of necessity, we're doing the commentary afterwards, so I'll just share what I'm thinking, talk about strategy, and talk about the quest in general. The quest setup starts with one enemy in the setup area, and it's all about finding clues. I didn't like my hand there due to a large number of high-cost cards, so I mulliganed, and I was happy with it because this hand is much more playable with low-cost cards, including at least one attachment for Beregond, which is always something I'm looking for with this deck. For the quest, at the end of the round, we raise each player's threat by 1, and you need to control one clue objective to advance. So I start out by getting the shield on Beregond, which is a play that I will make every single time it's available. And then I start thinking about if there actually is anything else I can do here and what my plan will be for this round. I was uncertain of what plan or what strategy to use on this quest as I'd never played it before. So I'm just taking a look at the cards here to see what exactly they do. I decided I'd quest with just Éowyn since there's not much threat against in the staging area and you can't make progress on anything. So you got a blank surge there onto a enemy who attacks at the end of the combat phase if he's still in staging. And enemies in Phase 1 can't be optionally engaged, so there's nothing I could do about that enemy being there if I'd wanted to. I don't know that I would have optionally engaged him even if I could, though. So when you move to the location, you've got to put those enemies into the encounter deck and shuffle it up. Taking a look at the other cards that are set aside there. And one enemy is going to engage. That enemy I couldn't engage if I wanted to, which is unfortunate because he's going to make an attack either way. So the Aldburg Malcontent is going to attack Beregond here. And he gets returned to the staging area afterwards, which is annoying. And the Deadly Defector gets an attack as well at the end of the combat phase, which would go against Treebeard. Shadow card has no effect, or it does have an effect. It discards the attachment that I controlled, but does no damage on Treebeard. So I believe that's all for this round. I forgot to lower the threat for Beregond. And yep, that's it. Raise threat by 1 for the quest. Unexpected Courage was a good draw. Allows me to tank 2 attacks with Beregond. And I can get Elfstone on the location. So this location is immune to player card effects. However, it's not immune to attachments, so you can still attach something to it. It's just that whatever you attach to it can't have any effect on it, but Elfstone doesn't except to provide +1 quest point, so Elfstone doesn't care about immune to player card effects. Some attachments, I don't know if some attachments do, or if the immune to player card effects just mean you can't clear from staging with like Asphaloth or something like that. I think that's probably the primary reason. So here I'm just talking to nobody in the original video because my mic wasn't picking up the audio since it was disconnected. I really like this Bond of Friendship Treebeard deck. It's got a lot of ways to deal with stuff, and the threat reduction from Frodo and Beregond makes it very stable. Very, very stable. So I decide to quest with Éowyn, Treebeard, and Frodo, and ready up Treebeard. And the treachery doesn't do much besides exhausting a hero that is not committed to the quest, which will use up one of Beregond's actions. Which is a little annoying, because it means he can't take both attacks. I should get one threat reduction from Frodo questing successfully, which I'll remember in just a moment. And the enemy's going to attack Beregond for no damage. There I remembered the threat reduction for Beregond. I don't know when I remember the threat reduction for Frodo. Maybe I don't, but I think I do. And then I was buffing Treebeard there, and then using Boomed and Trumpeted to ready him, so that I could take out that enemy and then also be available to tank the attack from Deadly Defector. You have to deal at least 1 damage to Treebeard in order to use Boomed and Trumpeted. The attack does no damage. So, move on to the next round. Do I remember to raise threat by 1 extra? So I may have forgotten to lower threat by 1 and forgotten to raise threat by 1. That works out. I'm thinking about whether I want to play Rosy Cotton or Armored Destrier here. I thought about it, but I decided I'd rather use Frodo's ability. I think there I lower threat by 1, so I probably should have threat 1 higher than I did have it at this point. The encounter card isn't of much concern, so I get to have Firyal out for free here and get the location cleared, which is going to flip it and reveal it. It's not guarded, so we add Whisperer in the darkness to the staging area, and then it gets attached to a hero. Whisperer in the darkness raises threat by 1 after location's explored, and after the stage is defeated, you add the Whisperer to the staging area. So I think I put this quest on Frodo. That's going to basically permanently burn one of Beregond's actions for the rest of the game. I put the clue on Frodo. So it's going to burn one of Beregond's actions for the rest of the game. And I'm thinking about whether I want to move to that location or not. But I was uncertain of exactly how the mechanics of this quest worked. I do realize that I move on to phase 2 since I have claimed a clue. So no more threat increase at the end of the round. I need 4 clues to move on. And I decide not to move to the garrison barracks, being uncertain exactly how the mechanics of the quest work. Looking back, I think that's probably fine. Probably just fine. But I do decide to move to Well-Lit Hall. So Garrison Barracks is going to have 2 threat at this point. It gets threat equal to twice the number of clues. And Deadly Defector gets an attack at the end of the combat phase. Since I was at +1 threat at that point, I believe I should have engaged him, although maybe not with Frodo questing successfully. It's hard to keep straight all the threat increases and reductions. I don't think it would have made much difference though. In fact, it might have helped me because I could have taken him out a little earlier. So here I think about Sword Thane on Firyal, but then I decide against it and decided to go on Rosie. Because leadership does end up starved for resources, it's hard to play any leadership cards when you're spending your resource on Frodo's ability every round. So I go ahead and get out Rosie and give her hero status in order to accelerate my resources. Enabled me to play Armored Destrier and continue using Frodo's ability. And I think I play Pippin here as well. There's not much in the encounter deck, it seems, to punish playing a lot of allies. So you can use this phase to establish a pretty stable board state. So I quest. I think for this round I completely forget I have the option of using Firyal's ability if I want to. So I just automatically go with the card, which I likely would have discarded with Firyal if I'd remembered. But oh well. That enemy gets an immediate attack, which goes against Beregond and results in threat reduction, as it does no damage. As a result of the quest, I clear the location, make a little progress on the side quest. And the enemy engages. And it's really only the option for defending is Treebeard. That shadow card does nothing. And we're on to the next round. Just getting set up. Gonna be a while before I can play Gildor. But this is a long quest. So I just immediately move to the questing phase, opting not to play Armored Destrier here, so I continue using Frodo's ability. And the encounter card is of not much concern. I have a choice whether to let it go through with Firyal or not, and I think I decide to keep it. Keep it around. I'm just making sure I fully understand what the location does. And then I put my highest cost ally face up underneath it. Count up my quest progress. And I realize that I've cleared the quest, so I have to add the Whisperer to the staging area. A 45 threat enemy, and his card text heavily favors killing him in one round if possible. Because at the end of the round he has to return to the staging area and make an immediate attack. So I opt to leave him in staging until such time as I'm able to clear him in one round. Could have used Éowyn's ability on it. I saved Éowyn's ability for a rainy day and I never really needed it. So now the enemy comes in. And I realize here that Beregond should only have one action due to the objective, the clue objective in my possession. Or Yeah, I think I do. Or did I think about it and decide that Frodo didn't need to ready last round? Because I can't remember if he did quest or not, I think, at this point. Last round. I'd have to rewind the video and check. But I was pretty certain that Frodo hadn't quested last round, and therefore he didn't need to ready up and waste one of Beregond's actions. Had it been the case that Frodo did need to ready up and waste one of Beregond's actions, I likely would have burned Éowyn's ability this round. And that would have been fine, since I never ended up needing to use Éowyn's ability. Wouldn't have been a problem. Or I could have taken the other attack on Treebeard and then used Armored Destrier next turn to tank both enemies with Beregond and then take one out then. So, either way. Depending on what would have happened, or trying to guess what would have happened, I'm thinking any path would have been fine. So I get out Armored Destrier and Honor Guard there. Starting to get a pretty stable board state established. I was uncertain how to play this quest properly, this being the first time I played it, so I opted to slow play everything and not engage the Whisperer until the staging area is pretty clear and I had a stable board state. So, cleared the location, so Firyal comes back to my control. And I'll go ahead and move to Old Farmhouse. And my plan at this point was to clear the enemy and then see about the boss. The attack on Beregond did no damage. And I could then use Treebeard, Beregond, and Firyal to clear the enemy. Still need a couple of turns before I can play Gildor. I think throughout the game I might have forgotten a couple of times to generate a resource on Rosie. Not likely to matter. So, we go ahead and get the Warden of Healing out that I drew. That's a great card, a very timely card. I was in need of some healing for Treebeard. And the card is another enemy, and I think at this point I forgot once again that I could cancel it with Firyal if I'd wanted to. And I probably would have wanted to, but instead I let him make an immediate attack. Wasn't really sure if there are some nasty encounter cards or not. Now looking back, I would probably have canceled that one. So the questing clears Old Farmhouse. And we discard until finding another location, which is just another old farmhouse. So not much was accomplished, and have another Recreant Rider to clear. I had forgotten to ready Treebeard with Frodo. Instead, I accidentally readied Frodo. May have also forgotten Frodo's threat reduction. I'm not sure. But Beregond takes no damage. And no point in attacking with Treebeard there. So, gonna have to wait on defeating the Whisperer if I want to do it with a clean board. Did I remember the threat reduction from Beregond and Frodo eventually? We'll see. Well, I guess I didn't. So I'm like, I don't know. I should be like 2 lower and then 1 higher, so maybe like 1 lower. I'm not really sure. I'm somewhere in the ballpark, I guess. There's a lot of little things going on, especially in new quests. So I decided to play the Ranger of Cardolan that I drew. I'm liking these neutral cards more and more the more that I play them. Neutral cards with decent stats, because they really help smooth out resource curves. So like Ranger of Cardolan, Thalion is a card I like in a lot of quests. I guess I never did remember the threat reduction. Oh well. Yeah, pretty innocuous encounter card for this one. Not sure what I'm thinking about here. So we discard until I find another location, which is Abandoned Mill. And then, do I remember the Doomed one? Oh, it's added, right? So I didn't have to do the Doomed one. And then eventually I decided to move to Abandoned Mill instead, I think. Just bite the bullet. And then this round I could take out the Recreant Rider with the help of the Ranger of Cardolan. Shadow card has no effect for an enemy that's been engaged. Got 7 attack available. So I go ahead and do the healing. And questing once again after the end of the round. Should be probably 1 threat lower, but no big deal. And it's once again another Decrepit Hovel. So I have to discard until I find an enemy now, which is a Town Guard. So I'm not having a lot of success in clearing out things to engage the Old Whisperer. I could have done that a lot sooner, I think, looking back, but I was playing very cautiously because I didn't know the quest very well. And I moved to one of the Decrepit Hovels. Town Guard attacks Beregond. So it'll do nothing, but I use the Honor Guard to cancel the extra damage from the Shadow card. And then I remember that I should have an action exhausted thanks to the clue. And then I take the attack for no damage and get my threat reduction, and I retaliate and kill the enemy. And Arwen is a good draw here. Gives a buff to Beregond. I don't see any reason why I would put it on anyone other than Beregond for the rest of the game. That's typically the case with Arwen. And I don't notice here that I could have put out Gildor, and I certainly would have done so had I noticed. But I didn't, so I think I do it next round. So things I've forgotten: 1 threat increase, 2 threat reduction, playing Gildor, using Firyal's ability a couple of times. But there's a lot going on in this quest, so that's actually, most of those would have hurt me rather than helped me. So at least there's that. If I'm gonna make mistakes, I'd rather they hurt me than help me. And once again, I could choose to discard this card, and maybe this time I remember that I can do it, and I decide I will. I also got Nori out. Get some retrieval going from the discard pile. Still only 1 clue in my possession. And I'm thinking now about using Éowyn to kill the Recreant Rider and the Whisperer. But I think I decide once again to slow play things. Take it easy. I'm thinking about how I want to play it. I'm counting up damage. I may decide to engage both the Whisperer and the Recreant Rider this round. And I think I counted it up and realized I had enough damage for both of them. Now I'm uncertain about it. Yeah, I realize at that point that I could discard the card with Firyal, and so I do that. And instead it's a location, which then captures Firyal, but that's not that big a deal. I'm happy with that exchange, really. And then I can go ahead and dispatch the Whisperer relatively easily. He readies up Pippin, since it's a higher threat enemy, and goes ahead and attacks Beregond. Arwen has 5 shields, so no damage. Gets some threat reduction. And I can attack back for 8 pretty easily. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pippin gets +2 against enemies with higher engagement. So that takes out the Whisperer, which means flip the card over and reveal it. And it is add a case of identity and red harvest to the staging area. And then if unattached, attach to the hero with the fewest clue objectives attached. After attached hero readies, deal 1 damage to it. So I put that on Treebeard. I'm going to be canceling the 1 damage with the Honor Guard for the rest of the game, I believe. Two side quests into the staging area. And now I'm just checking out what they actually do. I think I'm just trying to decide which one of those I want to work on first next round, if any. And I settle on a case of identity because it brings extra enemies into the staging area. So now I remember I can get out Gildor. I add a resource to Rosie, which is something I probably forgot a number of rounds. And I start thinking about, oh, now I remember that since Nori killed somebody, I can retrieve a card And I don't really know of a good way to put the top card of the discard pile on top of the deck. I only know a way to do all of them. So that's how I did it. I decide here I'd like to clear a case of identity as fast as I can. I have a very stable board state, barring any kind of card that punishes you for playing allies. And the card forces me to remove Frodo from the quest and then exhaust a hero that is not committed to the quest. I think I forget here that Beregond's ability should have been used already, so I should have exhausted an additional hero. But that wouldn't have mattered except for like 1 damage on Treebeard, which could have been healed off by the Warden of Healing, so not a problem. I have to bring that guy in at the end of the round, but I have enough quest progress to still clear the side quest. Which brings the Great Mead Hall into the staging area. Clears the location, so I get Firyal back once again. Not sure what I was thinking about there, except that I guess I felt 1 damage should be on Treebeard, which I then healed off with the Warden of Healing. Not entirely sure why I felt 1 damage should be on Treebeard at that point. But the enemy does engage, and should not be a problem at this point. I take 2 damage from Red Harvest. When an enemy engages you, take 2 damage. But 1 got cancelled with Honor Guard. So the Shadow card did nothing. Beregond defends, reduces threat. And the attack kills pretty easily. So at this point, I guess I decided that Garrison Barracks' time had come. I did need to put the Dunland enemies in the deck, but I do remember, fortunately, before doing much else. I don't know why I spent Beregond's resources there. It should have been Éowyn's. But I don't think that's going to matter. Whoops. So I'm thinking about how much I need to... There, I remember the Dunland enemies. I'm thinking about how much I need to quest for to clear the location and account for whatever comes out of the encounter deck, but still have guys ready. I'm thinking about whether I want to quest with Rosie Or if I quested with Frodo, if I ready up Rosie, if I could then use her action, but no, you can't. You commit characters to the quest all as one action, so. Not sure why I decide Rosie will be the one I ready up. Could have been like committing Gildor as well and then readying Rosie. But, you know, whatever. I decide that I'm going to discard the Abandoned Mill with Firyal at this point. And the end result is more questing progress. Flip the location over, it becomes a clue. I add the man with the twisted lip to the staging area, which is once again at the end of the round raised threat by 1, but I'm not in any danger threat-wise. That is going to be the third clue that I will control, and it's going to limit the resources you generate. Or limit your ability to save resources from round to round, I should say, on one particular hero. That will be Beregond. I determined that his resources I'd have the least use for, though I don't think I really use resources on anyone else either, since my hand is empty. Now I'm thinking about what I want to clear this round, and I think I settle on the man with the twisted lip. Now I encounter some odd error from the program, and I have to figure that out. And it gets more insistent. Despite my first attempt at problem solving being the standard ignore it and hope it goes away, did not work. But I believe I went ahead and reset it while it was paused and then got back underway. So we took care of the enemy. I should have had to deal 2 damage due to the red harvest. I think I realized that here and dealt it to the honor guard. And reduced it to 1 when I healed with the Warden of Healing. He healed 1 damage off of Éowyn, I think, and 1 damage off of the honor guard. So my board state is so stable at this point, and my threat reduction is so stable, I'm not sure there's many ways to lose. Just trying to remember all the little things. Got 3 clues. 1 more will put me into phase 3. So I'm going to quest here with the intent of clearing, I'm not sure, the man with the twisted lip maybe, or no, I decide to work on Red Harvest. Okay. And I do clear Red Harvest. So I have to shuffle the discard pile back in and go looking for an enemy when the Red Harvest is cleared. And then add the armory to the staging area. And I decide to go ahead and move to Great Mead Hall. With travel cost raise threat by 2. I engage one of the enemies optionally. I could have engaged both of them. Or I could have handled both of them, but you can't engage both of them, because you can only optionally engage 1 per round. The shadow card forces me to discard an attachment. but otherwise does no damage. And I go ahead and attack and kill him, which retrieves the Raven-Winged Helm with Nori. Yeah, this inefficient way is the only way I know of to do that. So I heal a damage with Warden of Healing, I think. I'm trying to remember at that point if I remembered all my threat reduction or threat increases, and I probably didn't, though I did remember the threat increase there from the Man with the Twisted Lip. Now I'm thinking about all the different clue effects. Éowyn should have 2 fewer resources here, but that's not going to matter. Now I'm thinking about questing so that I clear the Great Mead Hall, but don't clear the Man with the Twisted Lip. So I want to quest a little precisely here and not go as hard as I could. I'm not using Treebeard generally to save him for attacking or so that I don't take damage from his clue he's holding. So I remove Frodo from the quest and exhaust Beregond, I think. Or do I decide to exhaust Treebeard? I would also have the option of canceling that with Firyal. And that maybe should have been what I should have done, I'm not sure. But I do make too much progress, so I decide that instead I should remove Éowyn from the quest. Because I don't want to bring in the Spy Master before I'm ready for him. Yeah, so I realized that if I just removed Éowyn from the quest instead of Frodo. Except that I believe it said that I had to remove a hero with a clue attached, which would mean Frodo. But after I later count this, after I realized that, and then I later count this, I realized it doesn't matter. I miscounted because I forgot to count the town guards threat, and I forgot that I had a location to clear. So I actually only make like 6 progress on the quest, I think, even with removing Frodo. 16 threat against 7 against is 9 progress. So it's 5 on the location and then 4 on the quest. Which I realize. And I then flip the Great Mead Hall. And that will be the 4th clue, which will go on Beregond. Or, no, Éowyn. So we move on to Phase 3. And Phase 3 gets rid of all the suspicious and side quests, suspicious cards and side quests from the board, which is helpful. Means I don't have to deal with the Man with the Twisted Lip anymore or the Spy Master or any of those other cards. And I just need 25 progress, and I have to deal with an enemy and an encounter card every round. But given my board state, this is not a big deal. So that shadow card does nothing. The enemy attacks Beregond. But I have sufficient damage to kill him. So no problem. And I can retrieve a card with Nori when I do that. To the bottom of the deck. Given my deck is 33 cards, that's not likely to be very helpful. But now remove all suspicious cards and encounter side quests. And add any Dunland enemies, any set-aside Dunland or garrison enemies to the staging area, but there weren't any. They'd already been shuffled into the deck. So that just punishes you if you try to take shortcuts, I guess. So, 25 progress and an enemy and encounter card each round. Pretty straightforward at this point. Just have to deal with the effects of the clues every round. But given my board state, this isn't too big a deal. Elfhelm is never going to be played, given the clue that's depleting all of Beregond's resources every round. I'm just putting out Strider here as an anti-attachment discard effect. If an attachment discard effect comes, I'll be discarding Strider. So I just go questing nearly full steam here in order to put as much progress on the quest as I can. I remember at some point that I'm supposed to bring an enemy out of the deck. So I start to deal with the consequences of false lead before remembering it that I'm supposed to discard until I find an enemy. Don't remember it yet, but I do shortly. I have the room close error to deal with again. So I gotta pause the video for a moment to deal with that. And then that like reset the board to an earlier state, but I had realized at this point that I'm supposed to discard until I find an enemy, so I do that instead. And it's going to make an immediate attack, but I realized that when I closed the room to restart it, it reset the board state incorrectly, so I fixed that. Or it reset it like to the end of the round or something like that. So at the beginning of the quest phase, he gets his immediate attack. Then I have to do all my questing stuff. Figure out what was supposed to have happened. I think I was questing for like 22 or something, so -5 should have been around 17 progress. Yeah, I think it's like 22 if I'm counting right. I'm just trying to figure out who was supposed to be committed to the quest and who wasn't, since the room closing reset the board state incorrectly. But I think I had it right at that point. Questing for 22. Should be 17 progress. Trying to decide if I want to discard Deadly Defector to Firyal or not. I just think I decide I will. But unfortunately that enemy surges, so it's even worse. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 22 is 15 progress. Not a big deal. I think I decide I'll keep Old Farmstead. That I'll move there, I guess. I can't decide. And then I engage both enemies. So they both attack, or one will attack Beregond and one probably on Gildor. No damage on Beregond, so as usual it's threat reduction. No damage on Gildor. And I can attack with Treebeard and Nori and kill the Aldburg. And instead I decide to buff Treebeard and take out the Recreant Rider solo. To be honest, I think I just forgot about Nori there. I think if I'd realized I had Nori, I would have attacked with Treebeard and Nori and not bothered with the damage. But I think I just looked right past Nori and didn't even see him there. So, decided Treebeard would take him on solo. No big deal. So, I'm just checking the clue effects. I think I'd been forgetting to give Rosie resources. I maybe could have played Knight of the White Tower. But no problem. All I need to do here is quest for enough to... So there I play Strider once again, realizing that it had been reset back to my hand, and now I'm just counting how much progress I need. I take 2 progress off for the quest on Éowyn. I do the discard until I find an enemy at the beginning of the quest phase. And now I'm counting up how much I need to commit in order to clear the quest this round. I have to survive to the end of the round though. So I settle on questing for 24. I ready Éowyn, which should have had an effect, I think, of taking 2 progress off the quest. Which I forgot about, so I'd be at 11 here. But I'm questing for 24 against 5, so it's 19 progress. I overkill the quest by 3, so even if I'd remembered the 2, I still would have cleared it. I have to discard until I find a location. No problem. Engage the Dunlending agent. All I have to do is survive until the end of the round, which obviously I'm going to be able to do, and then I win. I discarded the shadow card with the armored destrier, and then the attack against Beregond does no damage. And I decide that I'm going to use Éowyn's ability here. Just for funsies. I use it to take out both the enemies. Not necessary. But why not? And that's the end of the game. At the end of the round. So, I like this quest. It's a fun quest. With this deck, once you get your stable board state with the threat reduction and the large number of allies, then you're pretty safe and you can mostly do whatever you want. The ways that these encounter deck challenges you is through threat increases and sometimes multiple attacks if you have dudes in the staging area. You get the wrong shadow cards. It's a very interesting quest. I enjoyed it quite a lot. So, thanks for watching.